What if the most ruthless monopolist in history was also the most disciplined, God-fearing man in America? John D. Rockefeller wasn't just a businessman, he was a walking contradiction. And the secret to his empire lies not in greed, but in a psychological obsession that turned him into a machine. The name Rockefeller is synonymous with unimaginable wealth. He was the world's first billionaire, a titan whose company, Standard Oil, became the most dominant monopoly the world had ever seen. But beneath the polished surface of the philanthropist lies the shadow of a predator, a man who treated business as war, who crushed his rivals without pity, and who bent the American government to his will. This isn't just a story about oil and money. It's about the mind that built the machine. Join us as we unlock the Rockefeller Playbook and expose the mind tick that allowed one man to conquer an entire industry. The machine was forged in chaos. Born in 1839, John D. Rockefeller's childhood was defined by his father, a charismatic con artist known as Devil Bill. Bill would vanish for months, running scams as a fake doctor, only to reappear with pockets full of cash before disappearing again. This instability created a deep, almost pathological obsession in young John, a need for order, control, and absolute certainty. While his father lived a life of unpredictable schemes, John started his first ledger, meticulously tracking every penny he earned raising turkeys. It was his first attempt to impose order on a chaotic world. At 16, he got his first job as a bookkeeper. He celebrated Job Day as more important than his own birthday, because it was the day he could begin building his fortress against the chaos. When the Civil War broke out, he paid for a substitute soldier to fight in his place. His war would be fought on a different battlefield. The war supercharged the northern economy, and Rockefeller's small produce business boomed. But then, he heard whispers of a new industry, one even more chaotic and profitable than war: oil. He saw the Pennsylvania oil rush not as a gamble, but as a messy, inefficient system waiting to be tamed. In 1865, Rockefeller bought out his first business partner, who was too scared of the oil market's volatility. Scared to his bones, but with a calm exterior, John doubled down. He was now the sole commander of what would become Standard Oil. He and his new partner, the ruthlessly efficient Henry Flagler, didn't want to join the industry. They wanted to own it. This led to the first masterstroke in the Rockefeller Playbook: weaponize logistics. He approached the powerful railroads with a simple, brutal proposition. He guaranteed them massive, consistent volumes of oil shipments. In exchange, he demanded secret, heavily discounted shipping rates rebates. His competitors paid the full price on the exact same trains, unknowingly funding their own destruction. With his costs surgically lowered, Rockefeller could trigger price wars. This was the infamous Cleveland Massacre. In just 6 weeks, he absorbed 22 of his 26 local competitors. His offer was simple: join Standard Oil or be erased. For a man obsessed with order, eliminating competition wasn't just a strategy, it was a moral imperative. By the 1880s, local dominance was no longer the endgame. Rockefeller waged war against the most powerful company in America, the Pennsylvania Railroad, forcing it to its knees and bringing its owner, Tom Scott, to financial ruin. This event created a lifelong rival in Scott's protege, a young steel magnate named Andrew Carnegie. But Rockefeller was undeterred. Standard Oil was now an octopus, its tentacles wrapped around 90% of America's oil. It had its own spies, its own pipelines, and its own politicians. He was no longer a businessman, he was an emperor. And every emperor attracts enemies. The public, stirred by journalists like Ida Tarbell, whose own father was ruined by Rockefeller, began to see him as a monster. The outcry grew deafening until it reached the White House. President Theodore Roosevelt, a man who built his career as a trust buster, declared war on Standard Oil. The U.S. government launched the largest antitrust lawsuit in history. It wasn't just a trial, It was the nation versus one man's creation. For years, the battle raged. The public demanded justice. They wanted to see the emperor fall. In 1911, the Supreme Court delivered its verdict. The machine was to be broken. Standard Oil was found guilty and ordered to be dissolved into 34 separate companies. His enemies celebrated. The Titan had finally been defeated. But here is the final, most brilliant play in the Rockefeller playbook. The one no one saw coming. Rockefeller was forced to give up control of his monolithic empire. But he still retained his personal shares in each of the 34 newly independent companies. And as these smaller, more agile companies, which would one day become Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron, were released onto the public stock market, a feeding frenzy began. The value of these individual companies skyrocketed. And John D. Rockefeller, the man who had just lost, watched his personal fortune explode. The dissolution of Standard Oil was the single most profitable event of his entire life. He didn't just survive the attack, he became exponentially richer because of it. So what was the mind tick that drove John D. Rockefeller? Looking back, it's clear it was never just about greed. It was about a pathological need to impose order on chaos. He saw the free market not as a place of opportunity, but as a messy, wasteful system. His life's work was to correct it into one perfect, efficient machine under his absolute control. The key points from his playbook are timeless. Master the unseen. He understood power comes from controlling the logistics and information that others ignore. Turn crisis into conquest. Every market panic was, to him, an opportunity to acquire assets and eliminate weaker players. Embrace your role. He was branded a villain, but he never let public opinion deter him from his strategic goals. He executed his mission with unwavering discipline. In the end, John D. Rockefeller's story teaches us a chilling lesson about power. The same obsessive discipline that allowed him to build the world's greatest company and become one of history's most generous philanthropists was the very same trait that drove him to become its most ruthless monopolist. His good side was as big as his bad side was bad. A perfect, terrifying machine of a man.